The system is failing. We're going to have more homelessness, more unemployment, and the government has to print more money. It's a command and control economy where the government tells you everything. I just don't trust our government. And they're going to have to start printing pretty quickly. And the more they print, the less value, purchasing power the dollar has, or the loonie, or the yen, or the peso. People are talking about inflation. I think we're in depression right now, and we're going to be the biggest depression in world history. In the 1970s, that's when the world was changing. The biggest bust in the history of the world is coming up. It's pensions. They trusted the government. They trusted their pension would be there, and it's going to go bust. And that's us. We get crushed.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Bearable Bull here. And I got this aggressively average content for you today. As before we get started with any information, we have to see the price action in crypto. Crypto has been standing sturdy after the FTX debacle. XRP has been showing strength relative to the rest of the market due to Ripple's Swell conference, which had powerful nuggets of information break from it. But at the exact same time, while the crypto market is in maximum fear mode and everyone thinks we're going to crash further, Jim Cramer is stating that digital finance people who keep saying we're safe in crypto, he's telling us to stop lying. If Jim Cramer has been any indicator for where markets are going to go, it's the exact opposite of what he believes. And while many people think there will be cascading effects from FTX, which is true, and there will be effects, we have to take this as a potential positive indication that something will happen to crypto to potentially save it. Regulations are going to come. A change in leadership is going to happen. We have a new Congress in place. More checks and balances are now afoot. But this is what I have to say. I've told all of you that I'm currently executing a 5-step plan to get Gary Gensler's ass fired from being head of the SEC. And a big reason why is because while FTX has occurred, and while Ripple is still getting sued, and while crypto companies have been asking for him non-stop for clarity, all he could do is dance his night away. The Mr. Burns of the crypto industry has given no clarity, and he is 110% responsible for all customer losses. Currently, Step 2 has been executed successfully, and I have personally moved on to Step 3. Some of these things that are happening behind the scenes will be made public soon, but I guarantee you, Gary will be out of here. John Deaton has had a petition for congressional investigations of Gary Gensler, and Tom Emmer, a crypto-friendly congressman, has won a key House leadership position. Tom Emmer has stated publicly about Gary Gensler, a new day is coming. And this is actually a conversation that's taking place in Congress now.
It's a little bit of I see this across the regulatory system, and I've spent 40 years on both sides of this equation. I've been in regulation and I've been regulated. And this gotcha situation where we go back and invent a new way to look at things and don't provide adequate notice, and then we play got you, and we have people essentially paying fines for something they didn't know about for years previously. It happens over at the SEC on steroids. It's not fair to the system. It's not the way we do regulation in the U.S. So again, I invite you to, will you simply go to using the API and propose a rulemaking?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what all of you need to understand is that they try their very best to not propose rules about this, while in the mainstream media talk shit about it at the exact same time. From Squawk Box, we have Jim Cramer stating, what do we know about Solana? The level of arrogance of people who think that crypto is good is shocking. Well, Jim Cramer, weren't you shilling Coinbase at the peak yet again? He stated, what do we know about Solana? What do we know about XRP? The answer is 0. The reason we know 0 is because the government doesn't feel it should be regulated. Oh, this is very interesting because Brad Garlinghouse has stated in the Ripple XRP markets report, quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter, exactly everything you need to know. But you choose to not know. And if you didn't know, now you know. Ladies and gentlemen, Ripple and XRP have been the most transparent crypto company in the planet. What happens next is that they get sued by the SEC because they met with regulators and gave them the time of day. Instead, what happens to the crypto industry is that Gary Gensler meets with the biggest fraudsters in the entire industry to talk about imposing regulations that would destroy the rest of the market. Gary, we're coming after you, Gary. You won't be able to dance your night away anymore, Gary. Do you see the issues that we have here? Gary Gensler, as stated by Jeremy Hogan, is trying to throw the CFTC and Caroline fam under the bus for his failures with FTX because it was, quote, a derivatives exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on behind the scenes is sinister. And the truth will all be unveiled very, very soon. But here, this is something you all have to know. From XRP Darren, regulations were already decided by the G20, as the G20 has been happening while this debacle was taking place. The US has taken its time, but now FTX is a catalyst to implement these laws. These are cross-border technologies that live on the internet, meaning cross-border international regulations have to take precedent over one jurisdiction. The SEC lawsuit against Ripple was a facade because international regulations will come into play very soon, and the SEC will soon lose their authority to being able to regulate Ripple and the crypto market as a whole. There are many crypto security tokens, but the SEC's very own Gary Gensler went too damn far and did absolutely nothing at the wheel.
It's operating abroad. I mean, that's the other piece of this. As long as this is a global business and we have these tokens operating in other places, no matter what, to some degree, it's going to rebound and redound to us.
I mean, this is it's a huge issue. Gary and I participate in a lot of multilateral organizations with other jurisdictions, and crypto regulation has been a high priority for several years right now. You're right, the sort of borderless nature of the technology makes it even harder than traditional financial markets, whether it's on the security side or the derivative side. Certainly swaps markets are very international in nature, but there has to be coordination among the international regulators. Ultimately, though, having a regulatory structure within the U.S., which I think has to be the priority, would then prevent, by law, both on the civil side and the criminal side, of having these, issuers, these exchanges offering services to U.S. customers.
I would sum it up saying that we have an international consensus in the G20 and in the FSB. And the key challenge now is to implement it in each major jurisdiction. We did it in Europe. We have a so-called MiCA regulation, including for stable coins. The so-called crypto winter of early 22 should not be an excuse for complacency. On the contrary, it's time to act.
The Bank de France governor just let you know that the group of 20 of the largest countries have already decided what crypto regulations will be. The EU has already acted with MiCA regulations. The rest of the G20 will follow.
And ladies and gentlemen, they will. You have to understand the perspective that crypto is borderless. International regulations will take precedent. We know that IMF, World Bank, BIS, and all these supranational organizations want to take control of the new financial system. I'm not supporting it, but this is what their agenda is. A Senate banking chair warns that crypto could crash our financial system following the FTX collapse. And I find this to be nonsense, because the only way this would be possible is if FTX was really doing things with part of the financial system and with legacy institutions. FTX was in bed with some of the highest levels of government. That's why the news is staying real hush-hush. That's why they're staying quiet. But all of us here in the XRP army, we've been paying attention. We've been exposing the ETH conflicts of interest with Bill Hinman and Jay Clayton. Now, we'll expose Gary Gensler's conflicts of interest with FTX. And I can't stress this enough. While all this is going on, one of the most brilliant pieces of information broke about Ripple this week. The evolution of on-demand liquidity, corporate adoption of crypto-enabled payments. I'm going to briefly broad brush over all of this. Ripple states in a hyper-global and ever-connected world the need for cross-border payments is on the rise, with an estimated $156 trillion worth of cross-border payment flows in 2020 alone. Ripple and XRP are going to tap into that market. In addition, Brad Garlinghouse stated, with all that's happening in the past few weeks, it feels even more imperative that we've gathered together in person to have an honest conversation about solving real-world problems with crypto and blockchain. As I said on stage, crypto will be stronger because of this if we keep focusing on transparency and trust. Ripple has and will continue to lead in this regard. They've processed $30 billion in payments on RippleNet, both fiat and crypto. They're bringing on-demand liquidity to Africa, their sixth continent. And Ripple has also announced they've tapped into 90% of the world's FX market. 10% more to go, and that's the entire planet. Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of how you feel about Ripple, XRP, FTX, or anything that's happened, that is impressive. And at 37 cents, XRP remains life-changing. Crypto regulations are going to come, which will allow institutions to invest their money in this industry without fear of getting sued, or future FTX-like scenarios happening. And here, I want you to listen to this clip from Hester Peirce discussing what regulations should come and her opinions on what's going on.
The question of whether something or not is something is a security or not is something that we really could be providing clarity around. I think the approach we've taken so far has been one that hasn't been focused properly, but I'm hopeful that maybe this will help us think more clearly about that. But again, this is a moment also for people who are interested in crypto to remember that crypto is not one thing. You have to look at each asset on its own merits. And that's a determination that people really need to think carefully about. These lessons that we can apply here are the same lessons that we should apply elsewhere when we consider buying assets. Think about what the risks are. Think about whether you can afford to lose the money that you put in, and ask questions. And if you don't get answers, then don't worry about missing out.
Yeah. Like any investment.
Exactly.
One last question here, because that has been the warning and flashing light signs that SEC Chair Gary Gensler has put out. He has obviously been very concerned. He was the one who originally called many of the cryptocurrencies out there and the entire space the Wild West. Charlie Gasparino here at Fox Business had reported that Chair Gensler had a 45-minute Zoom call with the former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried just about a month ago, or several months ago, before he filed for bankruptcy. Given the timing of that, how much discussion is going on right now at the SEC about why that happened? Do you have any insight at all on that?
I can't speak to meetings that Chair Gensler has, but what I can say is that it is important for us to make these decisions about regulatory structure in as open and transparent a method as possible. And so going forward, I hope what we can do is take a step back and have everyone come in and talk to us in a way that maybe at a round table where people can interact with each other. And I think that will help to produce the best regulatory outcome.
Transparency and quality thinking. Let's hope that comes to what is a nascent stage of what could be something, certainly, that is useful down the line, digital currency. Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hester Peirce.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this needs to be said. Everything she said, Hester Peirce stated, was as cordial and as polite of a shot towards Gary Gensler as she could possibly make. Everything going on right now is his fault and his fault alone. Aside from FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, Gary Gensler is 110% responsible. Let's look at it actually. 6 months ago, the SEC investigated FTX US on multiple manners. They found no wrongdoing. Instead, they continued to meet with FTX while declining meetings with numerous other good players in the crypto market on giving them a no action letter to broaden reach in the United States. So FTX was on the brink of receiving a no action letter from the SEC, so they can have more control of the crypto industry in the United States without getting anything coming their way. Oh, how convenient. Given the current liquidator CEO says that this was even sloppier than Enron, how was this overlooked? This mess didn't just emerge in the last 6 months. The SEC failed at its job while Gensler met directly with SBF to talk favorable access. The SEC is broken and in shambles under current leadership. Its rules by enforcement approach has put a chilling effect on U.S. innovation while letting offshore conmen woo regulators. Congress should make reviewing this a top priority, and media outlets defending these criminals should be investigated immediately. I have a powerful clip from Leah Halpern describing the nonsense that the media is trying to pull to defend the people at the top. Please take a listen.
You know, it's actually wild watching the media rewrite history about FTX in real time. So I saw an article from the New York Times which wrote how this billionaire's crypto empire collapsed. It's not how it collapsed, it's how this individual stole billions from the average person. I just saw another article from Forbes which wrote Queen Caroline, how this risk-loving 29-year-old, I mean, the way they're glorifying these individuals is actually criminal. Why are they doing this? Well, it's fairly obvious. It's because these individuals and FTX was simply becoming the crypto arm of the establishment. They were working very closely with regulators to establish a regulatory monopoly over the entire industry. They were working with the World Economic Forum. They had the likes of Tony Blair and Bill Clinton. Speaking at the conference earlier this year, Tony Blair is very pro central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, COVID lockdowns. So really they are in bed working closely with the establishment. And so the establishment has two options. Also, don't forget that Sam Bankman-Fried was one of the largest donors to Biden's presidential campaign. Biden then sends money to Ukraine. Ukraine then sends money to FTX. FTX then sends money back to the establishment. All very weird and bizarre. So the establishment has two options. The first option is to simply distance themselves from these individuals. This isn't possible simply because of the digital footprint. We can see the connection. Second option is to instruct the media to rewrite history, to write these puff pieces so that nobody blames the establishment. You know, don't make out that they're so evil, even though they are. It's truly unbelievable. It's really important that we call this out every time we see it. This Forbes article is just an absolute disgrace. Queen Caroline. Unbelievable.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the article Leah Halpern is referencing. Queen Caroline. Oh, this is very, very interesting. First the New York Times, now Forbes, softball articles about what's going on. And she lays it out best. FTX was the crypto arm of the political establishment. They're gonna try and cover this up. But with a new Congress in place, at the very least, there will be thorough investigations done. And this is what I'm gonna say. The only way the industry moves forward in a trusting way is if these criminals go to jail. If no one goes to jail, 2008 happens again and again and again. Someone needs to pay for their actions. And I hope the legal system takes care of business. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bearable Bull here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna leave you with a final clip of the current Congress stating they're going after the top, seeing what's really going on. And that's all we can pray for. Let's see what happens. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. Now I'll be back tomorrow with another video.
We are releasing a report today that details what we have uncovered. We are also sending letters to the Biden administration officials and Biden family associates renewing our request for voluntary production of documents relevant to this investigation. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. National security interests require the committee conduct investigation, and we will pursue all avenues that have long been ignored. Committee Republicans have uncovered evidence of federal crimes committed by and to the benefit of members of the president's family. These include conspiracy or defrauding the United States, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The Biden family's business dealings implicate a wide range of criminality, from human trafficking to potential violations of the Constitution. In the 118th Congress, this committee will evaluate the status of Joe Biden's relationship with his family's foreign partners and whether he is a president who is compromised or swayed by foreign dollars and influence. I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress.